good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hi guys. Hey, welcome. Today we're going to do the salt and sand lab together. In preparation for this, you will need to print out the front and the back of the lab handout. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to step through the entire procedure with you. As we do, we'll be modeling what this looks like. And in addition to that, we'll be allowing you to make the measurements as if you were actually here in lab. So if you have not yet printed out the lab handout, you'll want to pause the video right now and go ahead and print that out and then restart the video once you've got it. So now that we're back and we're ready to dig into this lab, we're just going to follow the procedure together. And so as we do, we understand that what we're trying to do in lab today is we are trying to start with a fixed amount of salt. And what we're going to do is we're then going to contaminate that salt with sand. And then at the end of the lab, we are going to separate the salt from the sand and then reweigh it, which will allow us to figure out a percent error. So to do that, the first thing that we need to do is get our fixed amount of salt. So as it says in step 1, the first thing that we will do is tare a weighing boat. So we place the weighing boat on the balance, and we hit re-0, and the mass of the weighing boat comes out. Then, using the tap method, we will add, as it says, about a gram of salt to the weighing boat. So as we tap out the salt, the display on the balance shows us that we are increasing the mass of salt in the weighing boat. And we're getting closer to 1 gram. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get at least a gram. If we're short of a gram, that only gives us 2 significant digits. So we're going to get a little bit more than a gram. You'll notice that in the instructions for the lab, it says about 1 gram of salt. We're going to go a little bit more. So now we've collected, as this says, 1.09 grams of salt. Now, we don't know that that's actually what that weighs. So in order to handle this problem, what we're going to do is we are actually going to figure out the exact mass of this using the process of mass by difference. So as it says in step number 2, we're going to weigh a 50 milliliter beaker. So we'll hit re-0, and then we will place the beaker on the balance. And if you would then record this mass down in the data chart where it says the mass of the beaker, and don't forget to add units, in this case grams. So now we have the mass of the beaker. Then from there, step number 3, we're going to add the salt that we already weighed to be about a gram. We're going to add this salt to the beaker. Then, as it says in step 4, we are now going to reweigh the beaker with the salt and record this mass down in data point 2, where it says the mass of the beaker plus the salt. Later in calculations, we'll be subtracting these 2 things, and this will actually give us then the mass of the salt. So now moving along to step 5, we're simply going to come here and we're going to add a pinch of salt or a pinch of sand to the salt. So we have now contaminated our salt with sand. And now for the rest of the lab, what we're going to do is we're actually going to recover this salt by first dissolving the salt in water, and then we'll filter them apart and remove the water by boiling. So as we read along, notice in step 6 it says that we're going to measure out between 19 and 20 milliliters of tap water, and we're going to record the volume. We've already got this sample of water, and as we zoom in, we are then going to record the volume of this water. Please remember that when you're making a measurement against a scale, that you need to estimate 1 decimal place past the accuracy of the device. Once you've determined what this volume is, please record that volume where it says volume of water. Now as we continue on through step 6, it says to dissolve the salt in the water. So we'll pour that volume of water into the salt mixture, and we will swirl this to dissolve the salt. Okay, now that we have that salt dissolved, It is now time for us to set up our filtering apparatus. So the first thing that we're going to do, as it says in step 7, we are going to weigh an evaporating dish and a watch glass. You'll see later that the watch glass provides a lid when we boil the water. So again, we will re-zero the balance. We will place the evaporating dish and the watch glass on the balance, and we will then record that mass in data part 4 in your lab write-up. Okay, now that we're done with step 7 and we've got the mass of the dish and the glass, we're now going to set up our filtering apparatus. And the way that this works is we will place our evaporating dish, first we will adjust the height of our ring stand so that it's right above the top of the Bunsen burner. Then we will place our evaporating dish on our ring stand, and then we will adjust our clamp so that it places our funnel right above our evaporating dish. Once we've done that, it's now time to set up our system for filtering. So to do that, as you learned in last time's class, what we will do is we will take a piece of filter paper and we will fold it once in half and then twice in half. And then following that, we will open up the first and third pleat, and that creates a cone. The problem is this flap keeps that cone from sitting flat in the funnel, so we will clip the corner of that cone. Then we will place this in our funnel, setting this up to filter. The next thing we need to do then is we need to get this wet so that it stays put inside the funnel. And now we are all ready to filter our salt water from our sand mixture. So we'll give this a swirl just to get things moving a little bit, and we will pour this into our filter. As we do, you can see that the salt water is passing through the filter, and the sand is then being trapped inside the filter. This is effectively separating the salt from the sand. Of course, the salt's still dissolved in the water, but they are in fact being separated. So we will stop recording for a minute and we will allow these to separate, and we will come back once all of the water, salt water, has filtered from the sand. All right, welcome back. So we are now done filtering the water through the sand. And so the sand is now trapped in the filter and the salt water is down in the evaporating dish. So the last thing that we need to do then is we need to separate the water from the salt. In order to do that, we'll push the funnel out of the way, and we will cover the evaporating dish with the watch glass to keep this from splattering as we heat it. So we are now on step 10, where it says to remove the water from the salt by boiling. In order to do this, we need to light our Bunsen burner. Again, to do that, you screw the needle valve shut and you screw the barrel down and you turn on the gas. At this point, you will then open up the valve and you hear the gas flow. Once the gas is flowing, you then light the burner. But again, this flame is a very low efficiency flame. It will never boil water. So what we need to do is come to the bottom, and first of all, we adjust the height. In this case, we're going to take this yellow-orange flickering flame and decrease it until it's about 4 or 5 inches tall. At that point, we now need to adjust the heat of the flame, and we do that by screwing the barrel open, opening the vents, and introducing air into the fuel mixture. At this point, you can hear the flame start to roar, and this inner blue flame, which is about 1.5 inches tall, is the flame that we need in order to boil the water away from the salt. We then place this underneath the Bunsen burner, underneath the ring stand, and we allow this to heat and then begin to boil. What we will do is we will allow this to boil completely dry. We'll know that it's dry when it stops crackling. At that point, we will then shut this off and let it cool, but we're going to stop recording as this takes probably about 5 to 7 minutes to boil dry. Okay, and we're back, and it's now time to finish up the lab. So we have now removed all of the water from the salt by boiling the water off, and as it mentions in step 11, this is now cool, and it is safe to weigh on our balance. So again, we will re-zero our balance, and then we will bring the watch glass and the evaporating dish over to the balance. And that then will be our 5th piece of data, which is then the mass of the dish and the watch glass with the salt. This is the last piece of data that you need to record. You're now done with the lab. If you were here in person, you would then clean all of this up and put everything back in your drawer, and you'd be all done. Forgive me for not having my goggles on. I actually forgot with the break. But you'd take your goggles off, put those away, and you'd be all done for the day. What you need to do now is you need to do your calculations and fill out the conclusions. In order to figure out how to do this, please, if you haven't yet, watch the screencast that is also posted on this day. And there's a conversation there at the end about how to do the calculations. You'll also notice that on our website, there is an example of what this final write-up should look like. It's just labeled example. Click on that, and it will show you how to structure the calculations. Then you'll fill out the conclusions on the back, and then when your class meets again, we will actually bring our best work on these write-ups to class, and we will begin the next class by taking these labs, using them as a rough draft, and comparing them to examples of what these labs should look like, and we'll get these all perfected. The final write-up then for this lab will be due the following class period. If you're in class, you will simply turn that in. If you are online, you will shoot a picture of the front and the back of the lab, and you will email those 2 images to your teacher, and that then is how you will finally submit this lab. That then concludes what we're doing with our salt and sand lab. Hope that this has been a great experience for you, and get started on your write-up.